Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer. This is their part number LB4350-400-632. This is a single acting spring hinge from Bommer. There's the part number on the box. So what is this? Well, this is one of several different configurations of single-acting spring hinges manufactured by Bommer. This is for a particular door manufacturer's application. It's a somewhat unusual hinge in the sense that it's, asymmetrical. It's not the same width as it is the height, but nonetheless you will see hinges like this somewhat frequently in the world of residential metal-clad fiberglass, type doors. This particular type of hinge is meant for Peachtree manufactured doors and frames, and they use this type of layout. That's going to feature, you may be able to tell by looking at it, but this leaf is shorter than this leaf, okay, from the vertical axis of pivoting. And the LB, the 4350, the 50 in that part number means Peachtree. It means the leaf size. It means the square corners. It means the layout and location of the holes. It means the thickness of the leaf. The LB in the part number means that it's lube bearing. It's a 3-knuckle construction hinge, maintenance-free bearing construction, and it is a spring hinge when it's an LB43 something. So that's what that is. Now the 400 in the part number, that would mean that it's 4-inch tall, and it would mean that it's 4-inch wide, except this is an LB4350. So it's nominally 4-inch, but it's actually 3 3/4. That's what the width of that hinge is. Okay. The 632 in the part number, that means 3 things. It means it's made of steel. It means it is in a polished brass plated finish, and then it has a lacquer applied. Just moving that on the camera so you can see the different, way that reflects the light. Looking at this, it's polished brass. There's no question about that. This is made of steel, which means it's permissible. Well, it's permissible for use on a fire-rated application if you have a labeled requirement, because it's labeled. It has a stamp on here that it is a listed product, means the item has been tested and therefore is on file at the testing laboratory, meaning the results of the test are kept on file. That renders this a product that is listed. It's listed with the factory, the testing laboratory. They've tested it, there's a listing number, it has been approved, and it's labeled, meaning it bears visual evidence of that listing. Okay? In NFPA 80, it specifically states, and NFPA 80 is a code, and if your local, let's back up. NFPA 80 is a standard, it's not code. If your local code references NFPA 80, then it becomes part of the code. But what NFPA 80 says basically is there are limitations in terms of the size of the door that you can put spring hinges on. And one of those, in addition to limitations, one of those things in NFPA 80 is the requirement that the hinge physically be labeled. If you have a spring hinge on a fire door and it doesn't bear visual evidence, it is not permissible for use on that door. A label on a piece of hardware in a fire-rated opening doesn't necessarily have to be where you can see it visually, but they generally are. An example of one they're not visibly noticeable is a door viewer. There's really nowhere on the viewer to put a listing, so it's on the barrel of the unit, which requires it to be removed. So there you go. Now, if you have a Peachtree door, how do you know you have a Peachtree door? You may not. It might say right on the door, Peachtree. Okay. And that you are looking at this hinge and you're saying to yourself, yes, gosh, that's my exact hinge. Okay, that could be. If there's guesswork involved in any of that, what I'd like for you to do is to look at the template that's listed down below and that will give us all the dimensional properties. Let's switch to the screen view and take a look at the template and the other supporting documentation. Okay, so what we have here is the hinge. Extended description information. It's 4x3 3/4. It is a full mortise hinge. We'll take a look at the template. Lube Beari steel spring hinge, bright brass plated and clear coated. Full mortise, UL listed, grade 1 certified. That means it has been tested to at least 1,000,000 cycles. And one time I had spoken, of the several times I've spoken to the engineer at Bommer, I asked him how many cycles a certain hinge went to. I don't recall the hinge. It may have been an LB4350 hinge or something like that. And I says, you know, it's a grade 1 hinge, but how many cycles have you tested it to? He says, I don't know. I unplugged the machine at 4,000,000 cycles. So grade 1 is the highest rating that there is in our industry for caliber at 1,000,000 cycles. So, you know, this has been tested to 1,000,000 cycles in a residential application. Let's say that door is open 20 times a day. Well, let's just say 20 times it's cycled. 20 times 365. Let's do this. 1,000,000 divided by 20 divided by 365. You know, 136 years worth of use. Okay, so non-handed, sure, it can be installed on either left or right-hand doors. Self-lubricating bearings, that's the LB part of the part number. Easily adjustable spring tension, we'll go over that. Special template hole location, that we're about to go over. Designed to fit on Peachtree. You must use this hinge with other hinges on the door that are between 85 and 109 thousandths of an inch thick. So this hinge has a particular leaf thickness. If you're not using all spring hinges on the door, you must use other hinges that will allow the vertical axis of pivoting to be compatible. And those hinge leaves have to be between that range. Otherwise, it won't work. Made of steel, square corner. This is 96 thousandths thick. Does have 8 holes in the hinge total. Includes screws. Recommended maximum labeled door size is 3x7. Recommended maximum door weight, 85 pounds for 2 spring hinges and 1 ball bearing hinge, and then 110 pounds for 3 spring hinges. Replacement tension pins and rods can be purchased at these links, and they're included, and I'll show those to you. Now, the template. This document is going to allow you to review all of the dimensional properties of the LB4350. So if you're not sure if this is the correct hinge, measure yours and compare it to this document. Print this out, take it to your door with a tape measure, and verify. If everything seems to match up, then you're in good shape. Okay, so that's what the importance of the template is. It's full mortise because when the leaves are brought parallel like this, they're meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame, and that's accomplished by this swag on the hinge leaf here, the way it's been bent. That's your leaf thickness, 96 thousandths. Now, the next document that we have are installation instructions, and those are actually on the box itself, so you know exactly how to install this. Well, installation of this is hang your door. You won't have any tension on the spring. Just hang your door, and once you have the door hung, you will then, with the tension collar pointed towards the top of the door, insert the tension rod, and I'll demonstrate this before we wrap up the video. Rotate it clockwise and then insert a tension pin. If you're going to 180 degrees, don't exceed 3 holes. If you're going just to 90, you can go up to 4 holes. Okay. Adjusting spring torque, you can read all that, but it's basically what I just said. Certifications and hinge selection guide. This talks about how many hinges you can use depending on the requirements. So if you have a labeled door, this is where we have the document referencing NFPA 80, and certainly your local code would reference it as well. Maximum door size, minimum of 2 spring hinges on a labeled door. You can't have 1, you have to have at least 2. Okay. And again, that hinge needs to be labeled. We have a 400 size hinge. These are our requirements. And these are your table, your matrix of what you are working on. If you are going to install this with a non-spring hinge, make it a ball bearing. Two things: make it ball bearing and install it at the top of the door, and let your spring hinges fall below it. The top hinge does 70% of the work of carrying the weight of the door, so you don't want your spring hinge doing that job and making an attempt to get the door closed as well. Very handy to read through should you want to, but minimum of 2 hinges on a fire door. Now, the installation instructions, there's nothing else to mention, but we will demonstrate that. Let's switch to the camera view. But before we do that, I do have a video here that just allows someone to, if you're not sure at all what you need in terms of a spring hinge for a residential application, this video will show you where to find the resources to determine, what variant of the LB4300 series you need. This is a Peachtree 50 series. And let's take a look at the manufacturer's page. From here, you can review not only all of the Bommer products we sell by means of this navigation, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the product catalog. And that's handy because if we do a search for LB4350, we'll get to the page where we can find all of these spring hinges. Okay? Gives you a quick overview of just general shapes of corner treatment and location of or the positioning of holes. So you can start with this doing a visual, then you can go to the table that's here. LB4350 Peachtree. If you know the door that you have, it's listed in this door and frame manufacturer column. So that's very handy as well. The C, the contract grade, these are just your standard template hinges. They're going to have these holes in this, half moon, sort of shape, what I've heard people refer to it as. But it's called the template pattern, and the template pattern is uniform across manufacturer when they've made something for the template pattern. 3.5, 4, and 4.5 inches will all have the same half circle template pattern. So not really appropriate for a residential, door application. Although you could use, a 4x4, assuming that the thickness of the leaf was 130 thousandths, because they're contract grade, meaning the thickness of the leaf is greater than these residential hinges that are in the 96 thousandths of an inch range. Okay, and the gauge of that hinge leaf is listed here. They're all at 96 thousandths. Okay, so if you have a thicker hinge, you'll be working off of this page. And this product catalog is listed down below this video as well. Now, scrolling through the rest of the catalog will be a tremendous benefit to you if you are looking to review all things spring hinge related from Bommer, and in fact all things Bommer, period. Single and double acting spring hinges and a variety of other pieces of equipment for doing the work of closing a door via spring. So you may want to review this. And if you deal with hinges, you'll want to at least know where to find this catalog. And if you deal routinely with hinges, especially spring hinges, you'll probably want to familiarize yourself with this catalog. It's a very helpful resource. Bommer has been in business since the last quarter of the 19th century, 1876. Two brothers founded the company, and the current owner is the husband of the granddaughter of one of those two brothers. Let's wrap up this video on camera. Now, a very common question: how many hinges should I use? If it's fire rated, you'll use at least 2. I don't see any reason to not use all spring hinges. When it comes to some of these residential manufacturers, Peachtree comes to mind because they're so common as a door manufacturer. People often are looking for Peachtree hinges. Had somebody looking for a very unusual, it was an LB4350 is what it was, looking at that product brochure, which is linked below this video. LB4350 but it wasn't. It was square corner on one leaf, but it had that wider than 4-inch feature. So it was some very unknown hinge. So what they're looking for is to mix and match. They want a spring hinge, but they want to, they want regular hinges, and all they're finding are spring hinges. This was a bit reversed. In this case, we could have sold the client spring hinges only, and replace all of them, because I had no idea where to get this unusual hinge, because I'd never seen it. So the point is sometimes you're looking for a non-spring hinge, and all you can do is find spring hinges. And I say, well, sure, you might just want to replace all of them, because if you find someone that you can get the hinge from, they'll probably want to sell you a bulk case of them. Sometimes is what you'll find. And plus, someone like a Peachtree will contact a hinge manufacturer and say, I need 100,000 of these. I need 100,000 of them delivered every 90 days. Or whatever it is. So you're dealing with, an inability to buy those hinges from the manufacturer. There's no name on them. There's no information on them that would really tip you towards what to buy. So sometimes I tell clients, just, shorten the search and just buy, rather than buy 2 spring hinges, just buy all 3 and be done with it. The question is how many spring hinges to use to get the door closed and latched. Well, that has everything to do with the environmental conditions that are there, how much pressure, are there doors and windows normally left open or closed. The concern is that, especially if it's a fire door, that door needs to close and latch every single time. A spring hinge is nothing other than a spring that's inside of here that is getting wound up, and then the energy is released. I am a fan of all spring hinges, only because, and not because I'm a spring hinge salesman, but because you will notice that you have greater control, if you can call spring control over a door, when you have more reserve energy when the door is getting to the glassed closed portion of the cycle. If you have more stored energy, I think of it as torque. You don't go very fast, but you can pull a lot of weight. Getting that closed, you'll be able to more comfortably have the door open to a point where it doesn't have to race closed and therefore slam and sometimes bounce open, but move at a more moderate pace, but still have enough reserve torque to get that door to latch, because you have to overcome all of the air that the door is displacing. 20 square feet of air, a column of air that you're moving out of the way, and then the resistance of the latch bolt, and obviously the weight of the door. You might be contending with the frame is not, one jam is actually, it's not plumb, it's not true, level, or square. It might be kicked out and twisted or towed, so the door is actually trying to close as if it was moving upwards. So having more spring hinges rather than the minimum of what you think may be a benefit and may not be a detriment, except when you do have very heavy doors. Spring hinges are not technically load rated. So you don't want to put 3 spring hinges on a door that clearly only 2 are required. But if you're truly unsure, or if you have environmental conditions that are causing trouble with what you have, add another one. So there you go. Screws are included. They did provide all machine and all wood screws. It would not be unusual to see a metal clad or a steel type frame, a pressed steel frame with this. Be very clear, if you like, when you're ordering the hinge. Indicate what you want in terms of all wood screws, all machine screws, half and half. This way there's no reason to be concerned over the factory sending the improper screws. I would not say that it's common for every hinge to include all potential fasteners. So let's eliminate the possibility that they will send you, an inadequate arrangement of screws. Now, every order that you place will come with at least 1 tension rod. That's this black piece of steel here. And every hinge that you will order for this single acting is going to have 1 tension pin. This client ordered 2 hinges, so there are 2 tension pins, tension rod. When you have that door hung and it's in the closed position, you'll insert the tension rod and then turn it clockwise. And as you do that, you reveal new additional holes, into one of those holes is what you'll insert the tension pin into. You're going to want to be sure to insert this all the way in, and it will go so that it is practically, not exactly flush, but as close to flush as possible. You don't want that projecting off. You'll want to be sure that you are using the original equipment for the tension pin. You don't want to necessarily make your own, even though a 4-penny nail would a finish nail would do the job. That's not the way it was tested. Certainly if it's a fire door, it was tested with that exact tension pin. So you're going to want to be sure to use that. Plus, if it's a project that you're doing, if you, like these are doors on fitting rooms, you'll not want to substitute that. There have been more than one occasion where someone has hurt themselves by a grossly projecting piece of tension pin that is not the original tension pin. Mother is inside the fitting room changing, the youngster is outside, and they're leaning against the door, and they start to move, and they realize a little too late that they're now gouging their back with a sharp piece of projecting metal. So be mindful not to do that. That actually happened, by the way, so don't substitute that material. The name Bommer is synonymous with single and double acting spring hinges, along with other things, aluminum continuous geared hinges, non-spring hinges. They do a full complement of lavatory hardware as well. Why would you need Bommer's partition hardware? Well, if you want an architectural finish like polished brass, you could accomplish that. And that material is all made of brass, so it won't be a 632 finish. It would be 605, because that means three things: made of brass, polished, and has a clear coat. Anyway, any questions on the LB4350-400-632 or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.